Steel screamed. A violent flash tore across a quiet French hedgerow. A German Panther lurched sideways as smoke burst from its engine deck. Before the crew could understand what had happened, another shell slammed into its armor from a completely different direction. Radio operators shouted over each other. Infantry scattered into roadside ditches. Dust rolled through the trees like a living wall. Then, silence. The American vehicle responsible was already gone. Only fresh tracks carved into the muddy road proved it had ever been there. German commanders searched for artillery positions. Reconnaissance aircraft circled overhead. Forward observers reported no tanks, no anti-tank guns, nothing large enough to explain how a heavily armored Panther had been destroyed almost instantly before disappearing without leaving another target. For a brief moment, it seemed as if the battlefield itself had learned how to strike. But this machine was never supposed to exist. The answer began years earlier, long before American soldiers landed in Normandy. While Europe drifted toward another catastrophic war, military planners in Washington watched events unfold with growing concern. Blitzkrieg had rewritten every rule armies believed they understood. Fast-moving armored formations smashed through defensive lines that had once seemed impossible to break. Heavy tanks pushed forward, while motorized infantry followed with terrifying speed. Entire nations collapsed within weeks. American officers studied every report arriving from Poland and France. One conclusion appeared again and again. Existing anti-tank weapons could not keep pace. Traditional towed guns were powerful, but once deployed, they became prisoners of the ground beneath them. By the time crews repositioned their weapons, enemy armor had already broken through somewhere else. The battlefield was becoming too fast, and speed was becoming deadlier than armor. Yet the United States faced another challenge. America had not fully committed to war, but factories were already preparing for the possibility that one day they would need to outproduce every industrial nation on Earth. Designers knew they had little time to create weapons capable of fighting enemies they had not yet officially entered combat against. Then, everything changed. December 1941, Pearl Harbor. Within hours, military planning transformed into a national emergency. Factories shifted into round-the-clock production. Engineers abandoned comfortable deadlines. Every design meeting suddenly carried the weight of lives that would soon depend upon impossible decisions made inside drawing rooms, hundreds of miles from any battlefield. Among those searching for answers was the U.S. Army Tank Destroyer Command. Its doctrine rested on a controversial belief. Enemy tanks should not be hunted by heavier tanks. Instead, specialized units would remain hidden until hostile armored spearheads appeared. Then these highly mobile destroyers would race into position, strike with overwhelming firepower, and disappear before enemy commanders could organize a response. It sounded brilliant on paper. Reality proved far more complicated. Early American tank destroyers relied on modified half-tracks and lightly armored vehicles. They carried useful guns, but lacked the speed, protection, or versatility required for modern mechanized warfare. Against increasingly powerful German armor, every weakness became painfully obvious. Commanders demanded something radically different. Not simply another tank, something faster, much faster. History almost forgot how ambitious that demand truly was. Engineers at Buick, a division of General Motors, better known for automobiles than armored warfare, suddenly found themselves responsible for creating one of the fastest tracked fighting vehicles ever built. The assignment appeared almost contradictory. Carry a gun capable of destroying German tanks. Remain light enough to outrun danger. Travel faster than nearly every armored vehicle on the battlefield. Remain reliable under combat conditions. Produce thousands before the war ended. Meeting even one of those requirements would have challenged any engineering team. Meeting all of them at once bordered on impossible. Inside Buick's engineering offices, heated debates filled conference rooms. Should armor be increased? If so, speed would disappear. Should mobility remain the priority? Then crews would operate with frighteningly little protection. Every kilogram added to the vehicle risked destroying the very concept that justified its existence. The arguments became so intense that some officers questioned whether the project itself should continue. Yet abandoning it offered no better solution. German armor continued evolving. New Panthers and Tigers demonstrated levels of protection few Allied weapons could easily penetrate from the front. American industry needed a machine that refused to fight according to traditional rules. The answer would emerge from an experimental design known simply as the T-70 motor carriage. At first glance, it hardly resembled the heavily armored monsters dominating Europe. Its silhouette sat low. Its turret remained open. Its armor looked dangerously thin. Critics immediately attacked the design. Some dismissed it as little more than a racing vehicle carrying an oversized cannon. Others predicted catastrophic casualties before the prototype had even completed testing. Yet the engineers kept returning to one undeniable fact. No armor in the world could protect a vehicle that arrived too late. Their machine was never intended to absorb punishment. It was designed to avoid it completely. That philosophy would shape every bolt, every suspension component, every mechanical decision hidden beneath its steel skin. But the greatest gamble remained unseen, because buried deep inside the prototype was an engine and suspension system capable of something almost unbelievable for its time. When military observers witnessed the first full-speed demonstrations, many struggled to believe the speedometers. Some thought the instruments were malfunctioning. Others assumed the drivers had exaggerated their reports. They had not. The prototype accelerated across testing grounds at speeds that seemed impossible for a tracked armored fighting vehicle. Dust exploded behind it. Corners disappeared beneath flying gravel. The machine almost danced across uneven terrain, while heavier vehicles lumbered in its wake. Then an impossible decision was made. Instead of slowing the design down to increase protection, Army leadership approved the opposite approach. They embraced speed as its primary armor. It was one of the boldest engineering philosophies adopted by any major army during the Second World War. Soon the T-70 would receive a new designation, a new identity, and eventually a nickname that perfectly captured its astonishing personality: the M18 Hellcat. Its name promised fury. The battlefield would soon decide whether it could deliver. The name spread through American armored units long before the vehicle earned its reputation. Hellcat. Fast, aggressive, impossible to catch. Yet many of the soldiers assigned to it looked at the thin armor and open turret with understandable doubt. Some quietly joked that the nickname should have been Death Trap. Others wondered whether anyone in Washington truly expected them to survive a direct encounter with German tanks. Their officers answered with a simple instruction: if you're standing still, you're already dead. That sentence defined everything about the M18 Hellcat. It was never designed to trade blows with Panthers or Tigers. It was built to appear unexpectedly, strike with precision, and vanish before the enemy could react. It demanded speed, discipline, and nerve from every crew that climbed inside. History almost forgot how difficult that requirement really was. Unlike conventional tanks, Hellcat crews had to think like hunters instead of brawlers. Every tree line became potential cover. Every crossroads became an ambush site. Every hill offered an opportunity to fire first, or die first. Before the first production vehicles rolled off Buick's assembly lines, engineers pushed prototypes to their limits. Suspension components cracked under repeated punishment. Track assemblies loosened after high-speed cross-country runs. Engines overheated during long endurance tests. The open turret exposed crews to dust, rain, and flying debris. Every weakness became another engineering problem, demanding an immediate solution. Government inspectors arrived almost weekly, reminding designers that Europe was already burning. Delays meant more American soldiers would eventually face German armor without the tools they needed. Pressure mounted inside the factory. Assembly workers labored around the clock. New welding techniques shortened production times. Mechanics refined the Christie-inspired torsion bar suspension to withstand relentless punishment. The Continental R975 9-cylinder radial engine, already proven in other armored vehicles, was carefully matched with an efficient transmission that transformed raw horsepower into astonishing acceleration. The result surprised even experienced test drivers. On paved roads, the Hellcat could exceed 50 miles per hour, making it the fastest fully tracked armored fighting vehicle fielded by any major nation during the Second World War. Even across rough ground, it consistently outran vehicles that carried much heavier armor. Dust clouds often revealed its position before enemy observers could actually see the machine itself. But speed alone meant nothing without a weapon capable of stopping German tanks. Mounted inside the open turret was the powerful 76mm M1 gun. It lacked the massive size of later heavy tank guns, yet it combined respectable armor penetration with remarkable accuracy and a high rate of fire. Skilled crews could engage targets quickly before relocating to entirely new firing positions. That mobility became the real weapon. Yet this wasn't the biggest problem. German armor was improving faster than Allied intelligence had predicted. Reports arriving from Italy and Eastern Europe described encounters with Panthers whose sloped frontal armor resisted many Allied anti-tank rounds. Even worse, the fearsome Tiger had become a symbol of German battlefield dominance. American commanders understood a painful reality. If Hellcats tried to duel these heavy tanks head-on, the outcome would rarely favor the Americans. Tactical doctrine had to evolve alongside the machine itself. Crews trained relentlessly in camouflage, rapid movement, and coordinated ambushes. Drivers practiced accelerating from concealed positions in seconds. Gunners rehearsed target acquisition until every movement became instinctive. Loaders learned to feed shells into the breech almost automatically, while commanders scanned constantly for escape routes instead of additional targets. Every member of the five-man crew carried responsibility beyond his assigned task. Survival depended on teamwork measured in seconds. Then came the beaches of Normandy, June 1944. Across northern France, Allied forces fought through thick hedgerows that transformed every field into a natural fortress. Visibility often dropped to only a few dozen meters. German anti-tank guns hid behind earthen banks. Panthers waited silently beneath trees, ready to strike advancing Allied columns. It was exactly the kind of battlefield where speed could either become an unmatched advantage or a fatal liability. The first Hellcats entered combat cautiously. Crews quickly discovered that racing blindly through narrow lanes invited disaster. Instead, experienced commanders used mobility differently. They shifted constantly between firing positions, forcing German gunners to chase ghosts. A Hellcat might fire from one orchard, disappear behind a ridge, and reappear minutes later hundreds of meters away from an entirely unexpected direction. German tank commanders often believed they faced several American vehicles when, in reality, a single Hellcat crew was repeatedly changing positions. Then the real surprise came hours later. During several engagements, Hellcat crews began exploiting one of the Panthers' greatest weaknesses. Rather than attacking heavily protected frontal armor, they used their superior speed to maneuver around flanks whenever terrain allowed. A single accurate shot into thinner side armor could disable even one of Germany's most feared tanks. The tactic demanded extraordinary courage, because every maneuver exposed the lightly armored Hellcat to return fire. Failure usually meant destruction. Success transformed the battlefield. German reports increasingly described fast American tank destroyers appearing from unexpected directions, firing with startling precision, then disappearing before artillery or supporting units could respond. Confusion spread through enemy formations. Some commanders hesitated before advancing through unfamiliar terrain, fearing invisible Hellcats waited beyond the next hedgerow. That psychological effect proved almost as valuable as the vehicle's firepower. But an even greater test was approaching. Deep inside France, one battle would push the Hellcat and its crews beyond anything its designers had imagined. And what happened there would secure the M18 Hellcat's place among the most remarkable armored fighting vehicles of the Second World War. Winter arrived without mercy. Snow buried roads. Ice locked rivers beneath sheets of frozen steel. Dense forests swallowed entire columns of vehicles until only the sound of engines revealed they were moving at all. Then, before dawn on December 16, 1944, thousands of German artillery pieces shattered the silence. The Ardennes erupted. Trees exploded into splinters. Telephone lines disappeared beneath shellfire. American outposts vanished in clouds of smoke. It was the beginning of the Battle of the Bulge, Hitler's final great gamble in the West. German armored divisions surged through the forests, determined to split Allied armies and capture the vital port of Antwerp before reinforcements could arrive. The offensive struck with such speed that many American units found themselves surrounded within hours. Road signs pointed toward villages already occupied by German troops. Supply convoys drove directly into enemy ambushes. Commanders struggled to understand where the front line even existed. Then everything changed. Among the American formations rushed toward the crisis were battalions equipped with the M18 Hellcat. They were badly outnumbered. In many sectors, they faced Panthers, Tigers, assault guns, and veteran infantry advancing under the cover of fog and snow. On paper, the odds looked hopeless. Yet the Hellcat had never been built to fight on paper. Its crews understood that standing their ground against heavier tanks meant certain destruction. Instead, they turned the frozen landscape into a battlefield of movement. Engines roared to life before sunrise. Hellcats darted between villages, slipped through narrow forest roads, and appeared where German commanders least expected them. A platoon might strike one advancing column, disappear into the woods, then emerge miles away to attack another before enemy reconnaissance could locate them. To exhausted German soldiers, it felt as though American armor existed everywhere at once. One of the most remarkable actions unfolded near Noville, where elements of the 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion fought alongside paratroopers defending the approaches to Bastogne. German armor pressed relentlessly against the village. Every hour brought another attack. Panthers rolled through the snow with infantry close behind. The Hellcat crews knew they could not match the enemy's armor, so they relied on speed, surprise, and careful positioning. Hidden behind buildings and tree lines, they waited until German tanks exposed their flanks. Then the 76mm guns roared. Shells punched into thinner side armor before the Hellcats accelerated away to new firing positions. German return fire often struck empty streets where the Americans had been only moments earlier. The battle became a deadly game of seconds. Yet this wasn't the greatest challenge. The freezing temperatures punished the machines almost as much as the enemy did. Engines struggled to start in the bitter cold. Tracks slipped across ice-covered roads. Ammunition crews worked with numb hands while snow filled the open turrets. Every gust of wind reminded the men that the Hellcat's greatest strength, its open fighting compartment, also left them exposed to the brutal winter. Some crews wrapped themselves in blankets between engagements, only to throw them aside the moment another German attack appeared. They fought frostbite and enemy fire at the same time. History almost forgot how much endurance mattered. Then came one of the Hellcat's most extraordinary moments. During the fighting around Bastogne and throughout the Ardennes, American tank destroyer crews repeatedly delayed much larger German formations by striking from concealed positions and withdrawing before they could be surrounded. The goal was never to destroy every enemy vehicle. It was to buy time. Every minute gained allowed more American reinforcements to reach threatened crossroads. Every destroyed lead tank created traffic jams along narrow forest roads, slowing entire armored columns behind it. The Germans had planned a rapid breakthrough. Instead, they found themselves constantly forced to stop, regroup, and search for fast-moving American tank destroyers that seemed to vanish into the snowy woods. That delay became one of the hidden reasons the offensive gradually lost momentum. But nobody expected what happened next. As Allied air power returned when the weather cleared, German columns trapped on congested roads became vulnerable from above. The precious time earned by stubborn ground resistance, including Hellcat units, allowed fighters and bombers to strike vehicles packed tightly together along the Ardennes road network. Hitler's last offensive began collapsing under the combined weight of determined resistance, fuel shortages, and relentless Allied attacks. For the crews inside the M18 Hellcat, survival had depended not on armor, but on discipline. They learned to fire first, relocate immediately, and never remain where the enemy expected them. Veterans later recalled that hesitation was often more dangerous than enemy shells. A crew that paused for even a few extra seconds after firing risked becoming the next burning wreck along the roadside. The battlefield rewarded speed, and the Hellcat delivered exactly that. Yet hidden behind its growing reputation was a secret that remained overshadowed by its wartime success. Deep inside American testing facilities, engineers had already begun experimenting with improved versions that few soldiers would ever see. One prototype carried heavier armament. Another explored different turret arrangements. Military planners even considered adapting the chassis for completely different battlefield roles. Some ideas showed promise. Others never progressed beyond drawings and experimental workshops. But one little-known project hinted that the Hellcat story might have taken an entirely different path had the war lasted longer. And that forgotten chapter would remain buried for decades before military historians finally uncovered how close America came to creating an even deadlier successor.